The bookstore was nearly empty when Elena Abbott realized she had been standing in the same aisle for 20 minutes, completely lost in the opening pages of a novel she hadn't intended to buy. She closed the book reluctantly, checking her watch. Her break was almost over, and she still needed to grab coffee before heading back to the community center where she worked as a youth counselor. The job didn't pay much, but watching kids transform their lives made every struggle worthwhile. Elena tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and turned toward the checkout counter, nearly colliding with a man in an expensive charcoal suit. "Sorry," she said automatically, stepping back. "My fault entirely." His voice was deep, measured. He had striking features, sharp jawline, intense blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. There was something commanding about his presence, the way he stood with perfect posture, confident without being arrogant. Good choice, by the way. Elena glanced down at the book in her hands. "You've read it 3 times. The author has a way of getting inside your head, making you question everything you thought you knew about yourself." He paused, a slight smile touching his lips. "I'm Bennett James, Elena." She shook his extended hand, noticing the firm grip, the expensive watch on his wrist. "You must really love reading if you've gone through it 3 times. Reading is how I stay sane." Bennett's expression grew thoughtful. "Running a company doesn't leave much room for introspection. Books do that work for you." Something in his tone suggested more than casual conversation. Elena felt her heart beat a little faster, though she couldn't quite explain why. This man was clearly out of her league, probably just being polite before moving on with his day. She should excuse herself, pay for her book, get that coffee. Instead, she said, "What kind of company?" "Manufacturing. We make components for renewable energy systems." He shifted his weight, and Elena noticed he seemed almost uncomfortable discussing it. "Solar panels, wind turbines, that sort of thing. It's technical and boring to most people." "Sounds important, actually. We need more of that." Elena meant it. She spent her days helping teenagers navigate impossible situations, poverty, broken homes, futures that seemed predetermined. Clean energy felt like hope for something better. "How did you get into it?" Bennett's eyes lit up in a way that transformed his entire face. "My father started the company 40 years ago in a garage. Back then, nobody cared about renewable energy. He was this brilliant, stubborn engineer who believed fossil fuels would destroy us. Everyone thought he was crazy." He laughed, but there was sadness in it. "He died 5 years ago, left me the company and about 1,000 unfinished projects." "I'm sorry about your father." Elena's voice softened. She knew grief intimately, had lost her own mother to cancer 3 years ago. "He sounds like he was ahead of his time." "He was." Bennett looked at her with sudden intensity, as if really seeing her for the first time. "Most people change the subject when I mention the company. They either want to network or they are not interested. I work with kids who think their lives are already decided for them. Your father proved that one person with conviction can change everything. That matters to me." Silence stretched between them, charged with something Elena couldn't name. Bennett opened his mouth, closed it, then seemed to make a decision. "This is going to sound presumptuous, but would you give me your number? I'd like to take you to dinner." Elena's breath caught. Men like Bennett didn't ask out women like her. She worked in a run-down community center, lived in a tiny apartment, drove a car that barely started on cold mornings. But the way he was looking at her, patient and hopeful and almost vulnerable, made her reach into her purse for a pen. She wrote her number on the bookmark that came with the book. "I have pretty strict hours. The kids need consistency. I'll work around your schedule." Bennett took the bookmark carefully, like it was something precious. "Thank you, Elena." She watched him walk away, tall and confident, drawing eyes from the few other customers in the store. Only after he'd disappeared around a corner did she remember she needed to actually buy the book. 3 days passed before her phone rang with an unknown number. Elena was in the middle of mediating an argument between two 15-year-olds about a basketball game when it buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, focusing on helping Marcus and Deshawn work through their anger without throwing punches. By the time she got the boys laughing and shaking hands, her shift was nearly over. The voicemail made her smile despite her exhaustion. "Hi, Elena, this is Bennett, from the bookstore. I know it's short notice, but I have a reservation at Area tomorrow night at 7. If that doesn't work, I can reschedule, or we could do something more casual. Coffee, maybe. Whatever you're comfortable with, call me back." Area was one of the nicest restaurants in the city, the kind of place Elena had never been able to afford. She called him back during her bus ride home. "Bennett James. It's Elena. Tomorrow works. Great." She could hear the relief in his voice. "Can I pick you up?" She thought about her apartment building, the peeling paint and broken intercom. "I'll meet you there." "Elena, I prefer it, please." A pause. "All right, 7 o'clock. Elena hung up and immediately panicked. She had nothing to wear to a place like Area. Her nicest dress was 5 years old and slightly too tight. But her best friend Maria worked at a boutique and owed her a favor. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of anxiety and excitement. Maria found her a simple black dress that somehow made Elena look elegant instead of underdressed. She practiced conversation topics on the bus, trying not to overthink everything. This was just dinner. Just one evening with an interesting man. It didn't have to mean anything. Bennett was waiting outside Area when she arrived, and the look on his face when he saw her made the hours of preparation worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." It was an understatement. In a tailored navy suit, Bennett looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Inside, the restaurant was all warm lighting and soft music. The hostess knew Bennett by name, led them to a corner table with a view of the city skyline. Elena tried not to gawk at the menu prices. "Order whatever you want," Bennett said, as if reading her mind. "The salmon is incredible, but honestly, everything here is good. You come here often." Elena cringed internally at the cliché. "Too often, probably. It's close to the office and the chef is a friend of my father's." Bennett set down his menu. "Tell me about your work. You said something about kids." Elena relaxed into familiar territory. She told him about the community center, the after-school programs, the teenagers who showed up angry and lost but slowly opened up. She talked about Marcus, whose father was in prison, and Jasmine, who was raising her younger siblings while trying to graduate high school. Bennett listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he actually cared about the answers. "You make a real difference," he said finally. "That's rare. I try. Some days are harder than others." Elena took a sip of water. "What about you? What's it like running a company?" Bennett's expression grew complicated. "Honestly, it's overwhelming. My father built this company on relationships and intuition. I'm good at the technical side, the engineering, the systems. But people, leadership," he shook his head. "I spend half my time in meetings trying to make decisions that affect hundreds of employees. Sometimes I have no idea if I'm doing the right thing. That sounds incredibly lonely." "It is." The admission seemed to surprise him. "Most people in my life want something. Investors want returns. Employees want security. Business contacts want deals. My friends, the ones I've had since college, they don't really understand what I'm dealing with. And dating is." He stopped, looking embarrassed. "Sorry, that's probably too much honesty for a first date," I asked. Elena found herself leaning forward. For what it's worth, the fact that you care about doing the right thing probably means you're doing better than you think. I hope so. We're working on this new solar panel design that could reduce costs by 30%. If it works, we could make renewable energy accessible to communities that can't afford current options. That's what keeps me going. His passion was evident, transforming his careful demeanor into something bright and alive. My father always said technology should serve people, not profits. I'm trying to honor that. They talked through 3 courses, the conversation flowing easily from serious topics to lighter ones. Bennett had a dry sense of humor that caught Elena off guard, making her laugh unexpectedly. She told him about her disastrous attempt to learn guitar, and he confessed to being terrible at anything creative despite his engineering prowess. "I once tried to paint," he said, grinning. "My assistant thought it was a kindergarten project." "That bad?" "Worse. I have a picture somewhere. It's humbling." When the check came, Elena didn't even try to argue about splitting it. This meal probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. But as they walked out into the cool evening air, she felt strangely comfortable, like this wasn't as surreal as it should be. "Can I drive you home?" Bennett asked. Elena hesitated, then nodded. She'd taken enough taxis in her life to know when she was being paranoid versus cautious, and Bennett didn't set off any alarms. Besides, her feet hurt from Maria's borrowed heels. His car was exactly what she expected. Sleek, expensive, probably cost more than she made in a year. But he drove carefully, asking directions without making her feel self-conscious about her neighborhood. When they pulled up to her building, he didn't comment on the graffiti or the broken streetlight. "I had a really good time tonight," Elena said. "So did I." Bennett turned to face her, and in the dim light his features softened. "Can I see you again? I'd like that. Next week. We could do something different, maybe a museum, or actually, there's a thing at the community center on Saturday, a basketball tournament we organized for the kids. It's nothing fancy, but if you wanted to see what I actually do," she stopped, feeling foolish. Why would a CEO want to spend his Saturday at a rundown gym watching teenagers play basketball? "What time?" Elena blinked. "Really? I want to know you, Elena. That means understanding what matters to you." His sincerity was unmistakable. "What time?" 10 in the morning. "It'll probably run until 2 or 3. I'll be there." She smiled, leaning over to kiss his cheek before she could overthink it. "Good night, Bennett. Good night." Elena could feel him watching as she walked into her building, and she refused to be embarrassed about the broken elevator or the flickering hallway lights. Bennett had asked about her life. The least she could do was show him the truth of it. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Elena got to the community center at 8 to help set up, moving chairs and checking the scoreboard that only sometimes worked. By 9:30, the gym was filling with families, kids in mismatched uniforms. The smell of popcorn from the concession stand they'd organized as a fundraiser. She didn't really expect Bennett to show up, but at 10 o'clock exactly, he walked through the door in jeans and a casual sweater that probably cost more than her rent. Several heads turned, because even dressed down, Bennett carried himself like someone important. But he smiled when he saw her, making his way through the crowd with focused determination. "You came," Elena said, surprised by how happy that made her. "I said I would." He looked around the gym, taking in the peeling paint, the basketball hoops with nets that had seen better days, the kids warming up with determined expressions. "This is great. How long have you been organizing this?" 3 years. It gives the kids something positive to work toward. Elena waved at Marcus, who was staring at Bennett with open curiosity. "Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone." She'd worried it might be awkward, but Bennett had an easy way with the kids that surprised her. He asked about their positions, their strategies, treated them like their answers mattered. When Marcus mentioned wanting to be an engineer, Bennett spent 10 minutes talking about what that path looked like, the challenges and rewards, in a way that was honest but encouraging. "You really know your stuff," Marcus said admiringly. "I've been doing it a long time." Bennett glanced at Elena, something warm in his expression. "Miss Abbott tells me you're one of her success stories." Marcus ducked his head, pleased and embarrassed. "She's the one who keeps us all straight." The tournament was chaotic and loud and perfect. Bennett sat next to Elena on the bleachers, cheering at appropriate moments, asking questions about the kids and their backgrounds. She found herself telling him stories, the victories and struggles, the small moments that made this work worthwhile. "That's Jasmine," she said, pointing to a thin girl with her hair in a tight bun. "She missed 2 weeks last month because her mom had surgery. Jasmine was taking care of her siblings, making sure they got to school, cooking dinner. She's 16. Bennett's jaw tightened. "That's too much responsibility for a kid, I know, but she won't accept much help. Too proud." Elena sighed. "I'm working on connecting her mom with better support services. It's slow going." "What do they need?" "Time, mostly. Someone to help with groceries, rides to appointments. Her mom wants to work, but can't afford childcare for the younger kids." It was a familiar story, one Elena encountered constantly. Families trapped by circumstances that felt impossible to escape. Bennett was quiet for a moment, watching Jasmine steal the ball and make a perfect layup. What if there was funding for that kind of support, practical help, not just bureaucracy? That would be amazing, but the center barely has budget for the programs we already run. Elena had spent countless hours writing grant applications, fundraising, stretching every dollar as far as it could go. "We make it work. You shouldn't have to just make it work." Bennett sounded frustrated, not at her but at the situation. "These kids deserve better." Elena looked at him, this man in his expensive casual wear sitting in a worn-out gym, genuinely angry on behalf of teenagers he'd just met. Something in her chest tightened with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. The tournament ended with Marcus's team winning by 3 points. The kids were ecstatic, celebrating like they'd won a championship. Bennett helped clean up without being asked, folding chairs and sweeping the floor alongside parents and volunteers. Elena's co-worker, Denise, raised her eyebrows significantly, but Elena pretended not to notice. By 3 o'clock, the gym was empty except for Elena and Bennett. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this probably wasn't how you usually spend your Saturdays. This was better than my usual Saturdays." Bennett leaned against the wall, looking tired but content. "You do incredible work here, Elena. Those kids, they trust you completely. That doesn't happen by accident. They're good kids in bad situations. Someone has to believe in them." She grabbed her jacket from the office. "Are you hungry? There's a diner near here that makes the best pancakes." It's not fancy, sounds perfect. The diner was a neighborhood institution, vinyl booths and laminated menus and a waitress named Gloria who'd worked there for 30 years. Elena ordered her usual, and Bennett got the same, and they talked over coffee refills until the dinner rush started. "I want to help," Bennett said suddenly. "The community center, the programs, what would make a real difference?" Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Bennett, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to." He leaned forward, intense. "My company does well financially, very well. I donate to charities, big organizations that do good work. But this is different. This is personal. You're personal," her heart hammered. "We've been on 2 dates. I know, and I know this sounds crazy, but Elena, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the bookstore. The way you talked about that book, like it mattered. The way you talk about these kids like they're your own. I spend my days surrounded by people who only care about profit margins and market share. You care about things that actually matter. Renewable energy matters, Elena said softly. It does. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why it matters. Watching you today, seeing what you've built with basically no resources, it reminded me what my father always said. We're supposed to use what we have to help people, not just accumulate more. He reached across the table, taking her hand carefully. Let me help, please. Elena looked down at their joined hands, his larger and stronger, hers calloused from years of hard work. She should be suspicious of this, right? Rich guy wanting to throw money at problems. But Bennett's eyes held no condescension, only genuine desire to make a difference. We need a new roof, she said finally. It leaks when it rains and we have to cancel programs. We need updated computers for the homework help center. We need more sports equipment that isn't falling apart. She stopped, overwhelmed by the endless list. We need so much. Then let's make a list, a real one with costs and priorities. Bennett squeezed her hand. I'm not trying to swoop in and be a savior. I know you've built something amazing here. I just want to help you build it bigger. They stayed at the diner until closing, planning and dreaming and occasionally getting distracted by conversations that had nothing to do with community centers. Elena learned that Bennett had wanted to be an astronaut as a kid, that he couldn't cook to save his life, that he played piano when he was stressed. Bennett learned that Elena had a degree in psychology, that she'd almost joined the Peace Corps, that she was terrified of birds for reasons she couldn't explain. When they finally left, the sky was full of stars, rare and bright despite the city lights. Bennett walked her to his car, and this time when he drove her home, Elena invited him up. Her apartment was tiny, barely enough room for a couch and a kitchen table. But she'd made it cozy with second-hand furniture and plants that somehow survived her irregular watering schedule. Bennett looked around with interest, not judgment, stopping at the bookshelf that took up an entire wall. You weren't kidding about loving books, he said. It's my one extravagance. Well, that and coffee. Elena moved to the kitchen. Speaking of which, do you want some? Sure. They ended up on her small couch, sitting close enough that their knees touched, talking about nothing and everything. Around midnight, Bennett yawned and immediately tried to hide it. You should go home, Elena said, amused. You must be exhausted. I don't want to leave. The confession was quiet, vulnerable. I haven't felt this comfortable with anyone in years. Elena understood completely. She felt it too, this sense of rightness that didn't make logical sense given how recently they'd met. But logic felt less important than the warmth spreading through her chest when Bennett looked at her like she was something precious. Stay a while longer, she whispered. He did. They talked until Elena fell asleep against his shoulder, and Bennett carefully moved her to her bed, covering her with a blanket before letting himself out. Elena woke at 3 in the morning, confused and still wearing yesterday's clothes, finding a note on her kitchen table in neat handwriting. Thank you for today. It meant more than I can explain. Call me when you wake up. Bennett. She called him at a more reasonable hour and they made plans for Tuesday, then Thursday, then the following weekend. Bennett was true to his word about the community center, showing up with contractors to assess the roof, donating computers that were top of the line, never making it about ego or recognition. He just wanted to help, and he listened to Elena's input on what would actually be useful versus what looked good on paper. The kids started calling him Mr. James, treating him like a fixture rather than a visitor. Marcus followed him around asking questions about engineering. Jasmine's mother got connected with support services that Bennett's company funded, programs Elena hadn't even known existed. The changes were subtle but profound, and Elena watched her community center transform from a struggling safe haven into something that could truly change lives. But more than that, she was falling for Bennett James. It happened gradually, then all at once. The way he showed up when he said he would. The way he listened, really listened to what she said. The way he fit into her life without trying to change it. Showing up at the diner in his expensive suits, playing basketball with the kids in the gym, comfortable in her tiny apartment. He brought her coffee on long days, remembered details she'd mentioned casually, made her laugh when she was stressed. They'd been dating for 6 weeks when Elena finally looked up his company online. She'd avoided it, not wanting to make assumptions, but curiosity eventually won. What she found made her breath catch. James Renewable Technologies was massive. Not just successful, but one of the leading companies in the entire renewable energy sector. Articles mentioned Bennett by name, called him a visionary, estimated his net worth in the hundreds of millions. There were photos of him at galas and conferences, always looking slightly uncomfortable in the spotlight. Elena closed her laptop, hands shaking slightly. She'd known Bennett had money, obviously, but this was different. This was wealth on a scale she couldn't quite comprehend. And he'd been showing up at her community center, eating at her neighborhood diner, sitting on her second-hand couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her phone rang. Bennett's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," she answered, trying to sound normal. "Hey yourself. I'm wrapping up a meeting, thought I'd see if you wanted dinner. There's this Thai place near your apartment that looked good." "Bennett, why didn't you tell me how successful your company is?" Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "Did you look me up?" "I should have done it weeks ago. I didn't want to make assumptions." Elena stood, pacing her small living room. "You're not just successful, you're, what's the term, a titan of industry." "I hate that term." He sighed. "Elena, I didn't hide it from you. I told you what I do. You said you ran a manufacturing company. You didn't mention it was one of the biggest renewable energy corporations in the country." Would it have mattered? Elena stopped pacing. Would it have? She thought about the man who sat on bleachers watching kids play basketball, who helped fold chairs without being asked, who brought her coffee and remembered how she liked it. That man felt real, genuine. But this other Bennett, the CEO worth hundreds of millions, felt like a stranger. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe, probably, I don't belong in that world, Bennett. I don't want you to belong in that world. I want you in my world exactly as you are." His voice was urgent. "Elena, please, can we talk about this in person? I'm coming over." "You're in a meeting." "I don't care. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up before she could argue. Elena sat on her couch, trying to organize her spiraling thoughts. She wasn't angry exactly, more overwhelmed by the scope of the disparity between their lives. Bennett drove cars worth more than her annual salary. He probably had a mansion somewhere, went to charity galas, moved in circles where she'd be hopelessly out of place. But he also knew Marcus's basketball schedule by heart. He knew which coffee shop made her favorite blend. He'd spent his Saturday cleaning up a community center gym. The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Elena opened the door to find Bennett slightly out of breath, tie loosened, looking worried. "I should have been clearer about everything from the beginning," he said immediately. When you didn't seem to care about the company or the money, it was such a relief. Everyone else in my life, that's all they see. I wanted you to see me first." "I do see you." Elena stepped back, letting him in. "That's what's confusing. The Bennett I know is this thoughtful, slightly awkward guy who cares about solar panels and teenage basketball players. But the Bennett in those articles, the CEO who gives speeches at international conferences, that person feels like a character. He kind of is." Bennett sank onto her couch, running his hands through his hair. I play a role at work, at events, confident, decisive, always in control. It's exhausting. With you, I get to just be myself. The guy who doesn't know how to cook, who plays piano badly, who sometimes has no idea if he's making the right decisions. He looked up at her, vulnerable and open. You make me feel human instead of just functional. Elena sat beside him, close but not touching. I'm scared, she admitted. Your world is so big and mine is so small. What happens when you realize you've been slumming it with the poor community center worker? Don't. Bennett's voice was sharp. Don't diminish what you do or who you are. You change lives, Elena. Those kids worship you. You've built something real and meaningful with basically no resources. That's more impressive than anything I've done with all my advantages. You don't really believe that. I do. Completely. He turned to face her fully. My father left me a successful company and a clear mission. You started with nothing and created hope. If anyone's out of their league here, it's me. Elena wanted to believe him. Looking into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, she almost did. But doubt whispered in the back of her mind, questions about sustainability and reality. Tell me about your life, she said instead. The real one. Not the company, the actual day-to-day. Where do you live? What do you do when you're not working or with me? Bennett settled back against the couch. I have a house about 30 minutes from here. Too big, definitely. My father built it for my mother and I couldn't bring myself to sell it after he died. I work too much. That's the honest truth. 12, 14-hour days sometimes. When I'm not working, I play piano or read. I go to these networking events that I hate but are necessary for business. I have dinner once a week with college friends who mostly talk about their own companies. He paused. It's lonely, Elena. I have money and success and all these things people think matter, but most days I come home to an empty house and wonder what the point is. Her heart ached for him. Bennett, I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. I know I'm privileged beyond belief. But since I met you, I wake up excited. I look forward to my days instead of just getting through them. You make everything better, brighter. The idea of losing that because of numbers in a bank account, it terrifies me. Elena reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. I'm not going anywhere, I'm adjusting. This is a lot to process. I know, take all the time you need. He squeezed her hand. Can I still take you to dinner? Thai food, nowhere fancy. She smiled despite everything. Yeah, let me change. Over pad thai and spring rolls, they talked more honestly than they had before. Bennett described the pressure of running a company, the constant decisions, the weight of knowing hundreds of people depended on him for their livelihoods. Elena talked about the guilt she sometimes felt, knowing she could make more money elsewhere but unwilling to leave the kids who needed her. We're both kind of trapped, Bennett said thoughtfully. You by responsibility, me by legacy. You want to do something else, sometimes. But then I think about the solar panel project or the wind farms we're building and I remember why it matters. He set down his fork. My father used to say that privilege is only worthwhile if you use it to help others. I'm trying to live up to that. You're doing more than trying. You're succeeding. Elena meant it. Whatever she'd read about his wealth, the Bennett she knew was genuinely trying to make the world better. They fell into a comfortable rhythm after that conversation. Bennett introduced her to parts of his life slowly, aware of her concerns. His house was indeed massive, a beautiful modern structure with too many rooms and a piano in the living room. He played for her one evening, something soft and melancholic that made her heart hurt in the best way. That was beautiful, she said when he finished. My mother taught me. She died when I was 12, and for a while, piano was the only way I could process grief. He stared at the keys. My father never remarried. He buried himself in the company instead. I think I inherited that tendency. Elena moved to sit beside him on the bench. Play something else, something happy. He did a bright jazzy piece that had her laughing at the unexpected complexity. When his fingers finally stilled, she kissed him, properly this time, not the careful pecks they'd shared before, but something real and deep and full of feeling. Bennett responded immediately, one hand cupping her face, the other wrapping around her waist, pulling her closer. "I'm falling in love with you," he murmured against her lips. "Is that too fast? That's probably too fast." "It's terrifying," Elena whispered back, "but I'm falling too." They stayed tangled together on the piano bench, kissing and talking and existing in their own small world. Outside, Bennett's massive house felt less empty. Inside Elena's chest, hope bloomed alongside fear. 3 months into their relationship, Bennett invited her to a gala. His company was receiving an award for innovation in renewable energy, and he wanted her there. Elena's immediate instinct was to refuse. Galas meant wealth and society people and everything she felt uncomfortable with. But the hope in Bennett's eyes made her reconsider. "I'll need a dress," she said slowly, "and probably etiquette lessons. You're perfect as you are. But I'll take you shopping if you want." He grinned. "Fair warning, I'm terrible at fashion advice." They went together, Bennett patient while Elena tried on a dozen options, finally settling on a deep blue gown that made her feel elegant instead of like she was playing dress-up. The price tag made her nauseous, but Bennett insisted on paying, and she was too nervous to argue. The night of the gala, Elena spent an hour on her makeup and hair, eventually calling Maria for emergency help. Her friend arrived with professional tools and a knowing smile. "So this is serious," Maria said, carefully curling Elena's hair, terrifyingly serious. Elena stared at herself in the mirror. "What am I doing, Maria? I don't belong at these things." "You belong wherever you want to be, and if that Bennett guy is smart, he knows how lucky he is." Maria finished the last curl. "There, you look like a movie star." Elena barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, her hair fell in soft waves, and Maria's makeup skills made her features seem more refined somehow. When Bennett arrived to pick her up, his expression made all the anxiety worthwhile. "You're stunning," he said simply. "I'm going to be the most envied man there. You clean up okay too." It was an understatement. In a custom tuxedo, Bennett looked impossibly handsome, elegant and confident in hers. The gala was held at a 5-star hotel, all glittering chandeliers and elegant people in expensive clothes. Elena felt out of place immediately, but Bennett kept his hand on her lower back, steady and reassuring. He introduced her to business associates and investors, never diminishing her work, always explaining what she did with obvious pride. "This is Elena Abbott. She runs youth programs at the Riverside Community Center. Not girlfriend, not date. Her actual identity, her work, the thing that mattered." It helped more than Bennett probably knew. They sat at a table with some of his executives, all friendly but clearly curious about Elena. She fielded questions about the community center, slowly relaxing as she talked about familiar territory. A woman named Sarah, who apparently ran Bennett's marketing department, seemed genuinely interested. "We've been trying to develop community outreach programs," Sarah said. "Bennett's mentioned your work several times. Would you be willing to consult with us? We'd compensate you, of course." Elena glanced at Bennett, who looked carefully neutral. "I'd need to know more about what you're trying to accomplish. Practical support for communities where we build facilities. Job training, educational programs, the kind of direct impact you're already creating." Sarah handed her a business card. "Think about it. We could do real good if we had someone with your expertise." The conversation stayed with Elena through dinner and the award presentation. Bennett's speech was confident and polished, thanking his team and talking about his father's vision. But when he found Elena in the crowd, his expression softened into something private and real. During the dancing portion of the evening, Bennett pulled her onto the floor. "You were amazing tonight," he said, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. "Sarah's right, you know. You could help us build something incredible. I have a job I love. I know, I'm not trying to poach you," he spun her gently. "But maybe there's a way to expand what you do, reach more kids, more communities, with resources and support." Elena rested her head against his shoulder, thinking. The idea was tempting, frightening, full of possibility. "Let me talk to Sarah, no promises. That's all I ask." They danced through several songs, Elena gradually forgetting her nervousness, just enjoying the feel of Bennett's arms around her, the soft music, the way he looked at her like nothing else existed. When they finally left, sometime after midnight, her feet ached but her heart felt full. "Thank you for tonight," Bennett said outside her apartment. "I know that was outside your comfort zone. It was actually kind of nice. Your people are good people." Elena unlocked her door, then turned back. "Do you want to come up?" Bennett's eyes darkened with understanding and want. "Are you sure?" "Very sure." They barely made it inside before they were kissing, urgent and desperate and full of months of restrained desire. Elena fumbled with Bennett's bow tie while he carefully unzipped her dress, both of them laughing at their clumsiness. The expensive formal wear suddenly ridiculous obstacles. They made love on her small bed, tender and passionate and perfect, and afterward lay tangled together in comfortable silence. "I love you," Bennett said into the darkness. "Completely, terrifyingly, in case that wasn't clear." Elena traced patterns on his bare chest. "I love you too. It scares me sometimes how much. We'll figure it out together." He kissed the top of her head. "Everything else, we'll figure it out." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, Elena's small apartment feeling more like home than Bennett's mansion ever had. The next few months brought changes. Elena did consult with James Renewable Technologies, helping them develop community programs that actually served the people they were meant to help. She kept her job at the community center but expanded her reach, training other counselors, creating frameworks that could be replicated. The work was fulfilling in new ways, challenging and meaningful. Bennett became a fixture in her life and community. The kids stopped treating him like a visitor and started treating him like family. Marcus got accepted to a prestigious engineering program, with Bennett mentoring him through the application process. Jasmine's family stabilized with better support services. The community center got its new roof and computers, plus funding for programs Elena had only dreamed about. But with the good came complications. Bennett's ex-girlfriend showed up at his office one day, beautiful and polished, and everything Elena wasn't. Her name was Victoria, and she made it clear she thought Bennett was making a mistake. "You're a nice person," Victoria said to Elena during an uncomfortable coffee meeting. "But you don't understand his world, the expectations, the pressure. Bennett needs someone who can navigate that. Bennett needs someone who loves him, not his bank account." Elena kept her voice level despite her anger. "And I'm not going anywhere just because you think I don't belong." Victoria laughed, sharp and cold. "We'll see how long you last. This novelty of playing house with common people, it'll wear off." Bennett's father had the same phase, volunteering at shelters, pretending wealth didn't matter. He always came back to reality. The words burrowed under Elena's skin despite her attempts to dismiss them. Was she just a phase? A rebellion against Bennett's actual life. She tried to hide her doubts, but Bennett noticed the change. "What's wrong?" he asked one evening at his house. Nothing, just tired. Elena stirred her tea, not meeting his eyes. Elena, talk to me. She set down the mug. Victoria said you're going through a phase. That you'll eventually realize I don't fit in your world and move on to someone more appropriate. Bennett's jaw tightened. Victoria has no idea what she's talking about. We dated for 6 months 3 years ago. She wanted the CEO, not me. That's why it ended. But what if she's right? What if it's just a break from your real life? You are my real life. Bennett took her hands, urgent and intense. Everything else, the company, the money, the society nonsense, that's the performance. This, with you, is the only time I feel like myself. Today, maybe, but in 5 years. 10. When you're still going to galas and meeting with important people and I'm still working at a community center. Then I'll be going to galas and coming home to you. Meeting important people and thinking about when I can get back to you. He cupped her face. Elena, I don't want someone who fits my world. I want you, exactly as you are, always. She wanted to believe him. Looking into his eyes, feeling the certainty radiating from him, she tried. But doubt had taken root, whispering questions she couldn't quite silence. The tension came to a head a week later. Bennett had to fly to a conference in California, 3 days of meetings and networking events. He asked Elena to come with him, but she had commitments at the center. They argued about it, both frustrated, neither willing to bend. I want you there, Bennett said. These events are unbearable without you, and I have responsibilities here. These kids depend on me. Can't someone else cover for 3 days? Can't you go to one conference without me? Elena regretted the words immediately, but pride kept her from taking them back. Bennett left for California angry. Elena threw herself into work, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. They texted sporadically, nothing substantive, both too stubborn to apologize. By the 3rd day, Elena was miserable. Maria found her sitting alone in the community center office, staring at her phone. Call him, Maria said simply. He should call me. You're both being ridiculous. That man loves you more than anything. Don't throw it away because you're scared. Elena looked up. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? What if you're perfect for each other and you're just getting in your own way? Maria sat beside her. Elena, I've known you for 10 years. I've never seen you this happy. Don't sabotage it because Victoria, whoever planted doubts in your head, she was right. Elena knew she was right. She picked up her phone and called Bennett. He answered on the first ring. Elena. I'm sorry, she said immediately. You were right to want me there. I'm being stubborn and scared, and I'm sorry too. I was being pushy. Your work matters, I know that. They both laughed, relieved and emotional. I miss you, Elena said softly. The apartment's too quiet. I'll be home tomorrow. Can I take you to dinner? Somewhere nice, somewhere terrible, I don't care. I just want to see you. Yes. Anywhere. Bennett flew home a day early, showing up at the community center during her afternoon session. The kids cheered when they saw him, Marcus launching into a story about his engineering class. But Bennett's eyes stayed on Elena, and when she walked over, he pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home. I have something to show you, he said after greeting everyone. Can you take a break? Elena glanced at her coworker, who nodded encouragingly. They drove in comfortable silence to a neighborhood Elena didn't recognize, stopping in front of a beautiful 2-story house with a porch and a well-maintained yard. It wasn't a mansion, just a lovely home in a good area. What's this? Elena asked. A possibility. Bennett helped her out of the car. My house is too big, too isolated. Your apartment is too small. This is something in between, close to your community center, close enough to my office. Room for both of us if you wanted. Elena's heart started racing. Bennett, I'm asking you to move in with me, whatever. He looked nervous, vulnerable. I know it's fast, but I'm tired of spending nights apart. I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to build a life together, a real one." She walked up to the porch, peering through the windows. The inside was empty but beautiful, full of light and possibility. A kitchen big enough to cook together. A living room that could fit both their furniture. Bedrooms for guests or maybe someday something more. "It's perfect," she whispered. Bennett came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Is that a yes?" "It's terrifying and too fast and completely insane." Elena turned in his arms. "Yes, absolutely yes." They bought the house together. Elena insisting on contributing what she could even though it was a tiny fraction of the cost. Bennett never made her feel less than equal, treating her input as valuable, making decisions together. They moved in over a month, blending their lives in ways both practical and profound. Elena's books filled shelves Bennett built. His piano found a home in the living room and she'd fall asleep to him playing soft melodies. They cooked together, badly at first, gradually improving. The house became theirs, full of shared memories and quiet moments and love that grew deeper every day. Marcus and Jasmine came over for dinner regularly. Bennett helped Marcus with college applications, and Elena worked with Jasmine on scholarship essays. They became almost like family, the kids relaxing in the space, treating it like a second home. Other teenagers from the center started coming too, and suddenly their house was full of life and laughter and purpose. "Is this what you imagined?" Elena asked one evening, watching Bennett help 3 teenagers build a model wind turbine for a science project. "It's better than anything I imagined," he said, glancing at her with such love it took her breath away. A year after they met, Bennett proposed in the bookstore where they'd first seen each other. He'd arranged it with the owner, leading Elena to the same aisle, the same shelf where she'd been reading that day. A new book sat in the spot, titled with her name, and when she opened it, the pages were hollowed out to hold a ring. "I was having the worst day when I walked into this bookstore," Bennett said, dropping to one knee. "Everything felt pointless and exhausting. Then I saw you, completely lost in a story, and something shifted. You brought color back into my world, Elena. You made me remember why any of this matters. I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, building something beautiful together. Will you marry me?" Elena was crying too hard to speak, so she just nodded, pulling him up to kiss him while other customers applauded. The ring was beautiful but not ostentatious, exactly her style, because Bennett knew her completely. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the community center, surrounded by the kids and families who'd become their extended family. Elena wore a simple white dress, and Bennett couldn't stop smiling, and it was perfect in its intimacy and meaning. Bennett's business associates mingled with community center families, wealth and poverty mixing in ways that proved those divisions were artificial when love was the foundation. Marcus gave a speech that had everyone crying, talking about how Bennett and Elena had shown him that family was about choice and love, not just blood. Jasmine sang during the ceremony, her voice clear and beautiful. Maria served as maid of honor, whispering to Elena, "I told you not to sabotage it." They honeymooned for 2 weeks in Costa Rica, unplugging from work and responsibility, just existing together. They hiked through rainforests, swam in waterfalls, made love in a tiny cabin with no internet and no distractions. It was bliss, pure and simple, but returning home was just as good. Their house welcomed them back, and the community center threw a surprise party with a banner the kids had made. Normal life resumed, but everything felt different now, more solid and real and permanent. Bennett eventually restructured his role at the company, bringing in a COO to handle day-to-day operations, while he focused on innovation and community impact. He spent more time at the community center, developing programs that combined his engineering expertise with Elena's understanding of what people actually needed. Together they created job training initiatives, internship programs, pathways for kids like Marcus to enter STEM fields. Elena's work expanded beyond the single community center to a network of locations, all following the model she'd developed. Bennett's company funded them, but Elena maintained control, ensuring they stayed true to their mission. She traveled occasionally, training new counselors, but always came home to Bennett and the life they'd built. 2 years into their marriage, Elena got pregnant. It wasn't planned but felt inevitable, right in a way that made sense of everything. Bennett cried when she told him, then immediately started planning, reading parenting books and baby-proofing the house and driving Elena crazy with his overthinking. "We don't need a nursery designer," she said, laughing at his latest suggestion. "But what if we get the colors wrong?" Colors affect development. The baby won't care about designer colors. The baby will care that we love them. Their daughter arrived on a snowy January morning, tiny and perfect and demanding. They named her Rose after Bennett's mother, and she became the center of their world. Bennett was a devoted father, changing diapers and handling night feedings, and looking at his daughter with such wonder that Elena fell in love with him all over again. Marcus came to visit Rose in the hospital, now a college freshman studying engineering. "She's lucky," he said quietly, "to have you two as parents." "We're the lucky ones," Elena said, meaning it completely. Life settled into a new rhythm. Rose grew from infant to toddler, bright and curious and loved beyond measure. The community center thrived, changing lives just as it had always done but with more resources and reach. Bennett's company continued to innovate, pushing renewable energy forward, making his father's dream a reality. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Bennett and Elena returned to the bookstore. Rose was with Maria for the evening, and they wandered the aisles hand in hand, remembering. "I was reading a book about second chances," Elena said, finding the spot where they'd met. "I was trying to remember why anything mattered." Bennett pulled her close. "Then I saw you and everything clicked into place. That's very romantic. I'm a romantic guy. You bring it out in me." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Elena, more every day, which I didn't think was possible. I love you too, even when you over-research parenting techniques." That was one time. It was 15 times. They laughed together, comfortable and happy, their love the kind built over years of choosing each other every single day. The bookstore closed around them, but they stayed, the owner indulgently giving them time, knowing their story. Outside, the city bustled with life. Inside, in the quiet space between book-lined shelves, Bennett and Elena existed in their own small world. A CEO and a community center director, brought together by chance and choice, building something more valuable than money or status could ever provide. Their love story wasn't about grand gestures or fairy tale romance, though it had elements of both. It was about two people who saw each other clearly, flaws and strengths and everything in between, and chose to build a life together anyway. It was about finding home in another person, about growing and changing and staying constant all at once. Rose would grow up hearing the story of how her parents met. How a man in an expensive suit asked for a woman's number in a bookstore and neither of them expected to find everything they'd been missing. She'd see the way her father looked at her mother, even after decades, like she was the most fascinating person in the world. She'd see her mother's quiet strength, the way she changed lives through compassion and dedication. And maybe someday, Rose would wander into a bookstore, looking for nothing in particular and find everything instead. Because that was the thing about love, real love. It showed up when you least expected it, in the quiet moments between pages, in conversations about books and dreams and what actually mattered. Bennett and Elena left the bookstore hand in hand, walking into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and responsibilities, the constant juggling of work and family and all the complications of living. But tonight, they had each other and memories of how this all began, and that was more than enough. Years later, Marcus would bring his own family to meet Bennett and Elena, introducing them as the people who'd changed his life. Jasmine would graduate college with honors, crediting the support she'd received from the community center and the woman who ran it. Dozens of other kids would tell similar stories, lives transformed by programs that existed because two people met in a bookstore and decided to build something meaningful together. Bennett would eventually write a book about balancing business success with social responsibility, dedicating it to Elena and the lessons she'd taught him about what truly mattered. Elena would continue her work into her 60s, training a new generation of counselors, her impact rippling far beyond what she'd ever imagined possible. But the heart of everything remained the same. A love story that began with a question about a book and became a lifetime of shared stories, challenges overcome together, joy multiplied by partnership. They proved that different worlds could merge when the foundation was strong enough, that love could bridge any gap if both people were willing to meet in the middle. Their house remained a gathering place, full of kids and laughter, and the sound of Bennett's piano filling rooms with music. The community center bore Elena's name eventually, recognition she'd never sought but accepted with grace. Bennett's company continued to innovate, staying true to his father's vision while incorporating Elena's understanding of community impact. And on quiet evenings, they'd sit together on their porch, watching the sunset, Rose playing in the yard that had once seemed impossibly large and now felt just right. Bennett would take Elena's hand, no words necessary, just the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other completely. "No regrets?" Elena would ask sometimes, an old fear never fully banished. "Not a single one," Bennett would respond, always meaning it. "Best decision I ever made asking for your number. Best decision I ever made giving it to you." They'd sit like that until the stars came out, their love story continuing in the spaces between words, in the life they'd built from nothing but commitment and hope, and the courage to believe that different worlds could become one. The CEO and the counselor, the man in the expensive suit and the woman who'd been reading in a bookstore, finding their forever in the most unexpected place. And that was the real magic, Elena thought sometimes. Not the money or the success or even the programs they'd built. The magic was in choosing love every day, in seeing someone fully and loving them anyway, in building a partnership that made both people better than they could be alone. Bennett would agree completely, though he'd probably phrase it more technically, something about synergy and complementary strengths. Elena would laugh and kiss him quiet, because after all these years, she knew exactly how to translate his engineering brain into the language of the heart. Their story had no dramatic ending, because it wasn't really ending at all. It continued in Rose, and the children she'd have someday, in the kids whose lives were changed by the community center, in the renewable energy systems making the world better, in every small moment of choosing kindness and love over fear and selfishness. It was a story that began in a bookstore and spread outward like ripples on water, touching lives in ways they'd never fully comprehend. But at the center remained two people who'd taken a chance on each other, who'd bridged impossible divides, who'd proven that love was always worth the risk. And if you walked past their house on a quiet evening, you might hear piano music drifting through open windows, see a couple sitting close on the porch swing, and know without being told that this was what happily ever after actually looked like. Not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but full of commitment to facing them together. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A love story built to last.